Hey there, it's time for another selling point. Today, I want to address the topic of role play, and I want to make a prediction right now that when folks go to the Selling Point YouTube channel and they look through the available videos, I predict right now that 3 months from now there will have been fewer looks at the one labeled role play than any other ones that I have recorded and made. And so don't be that way. I mean, I understand, you know, I've been in a place where I've been the manager and I would walk into the sales room and say, okay, this morning before we all leave, we're going to do some role play. And boy, they start squirming. And the old Bucky will say, well, I just got a call from my wife and we got a problem. I got to go pick up my kid from school, or, you know, whatever. Because who likes role play? I mean, that just puts fear in every salesperson. But you got to think about it this way. Every profession has its form of role play. They may not call it that, but, you know, actors and actresses, when they're getting ready to make a movie or do a TV show, then they're going to practice their lines. Athletes of the world, when they go to play baseball or football, they go to practice every day. You know, they practice for 5 or 6 days and they play one game. And so if you don't like the word role play, then change the word, but don't change what the topic is really for. So instead of calling it role play, why don't you call it test driving? Why don't you just call it batting practice? You know, whatever you want to call it, realize that role play isn't the thing you do once you're good, but it's the thing that you do that makes you good. So what I want to talk about today is just to share a few ideas, suggestions that will help make role play in your location work better for you and help you to make more sales and have more success in the long run. First off, you got to make sure that you're not making role play easy, because the real world is not easy. And so you've got to learn how to take the pressure of the questions that you're going to get about price and about your value and about the competition. And then at the same time, the flip side of that is you got to become flawless in asking questions if you're going to be able to steer that selling conversation like you want it to go. The second point I think is important is to maintain what I call a good finding environment. Now by that, I mean no snipers are allowed. You know, there's always these clowns in some of these sales rooms that are just saying, boy, you know, I hope I get Smiley there as my partner. I'm gonna bury him. That's not the point. That's not the purpose. You know, there's no I in team. And so when you're working, you're trying to work toward the goal of everybody improving. So you want to have that no sniper good finding environment. And I would suggest that you break into groups of 3. And I hadn't always felt this way. I've done a lot of role play in the past with just the buyer and the seller playing each other. But I've come to find that in groups of 3, that you'll have more success that way, because you can alternate then the roles between the seller and the prospect and an observer. Because when you're actively involved in the role play as the seller or the buyer, you can't really turn around very well and evaluate how the role play went when you're finished, because you were involved in the role play. But if you have an observer, then this individual would be able to really see both sides and could make some notes, and then to have a decent conversation as you wrap it up when you're finished. So a debrief session after that would work well. But just remember, no snipers, no snide remarks, regardless how good or how poorly you may have performed in your role play. Thirdly, is I think it's important that you role play according to your role in the real world and according to the type of buyer that you're working on. If, for instance, you're a residential salesperson, then you ought to practice as if your buyer is a homeowner. If you're a commercial or B2B salesperson, then your buyer should take on the role of manager or an owner of a business. And so that's very important that you get into character when you're doing that. The next point is, I think that it's important if the manager or when the manager participates, because managers can rotate around between the roles in the groups and can really pick up on who needs more help, who's doing very well, who he might want to become the next field trainer or mentor, whatever. But when the manager's involved, he can really get the heartbeat of what's going on. I remember a time back last century when I was running a branch location of a company in the service industry, and even though I had a sales room where I had 6 or 7 sales guys at all times, and I had a sales manager, I would still go in there from time to time, not every day, but I would still go in there and participate with them in the role play sessions, because that would allow me to really assess where our current state was and how things were going and what we need to focus on to get better. The next point I think is important is that when you're listing and thinking about objections that need to go into the role play, they need to be real world objections. They need to make sense. They need to practice the things that you're going to run into daily. But the flip side of that is, just remember, don't ever go out and practice on real prospects that have got money in their pocket. That's why importance of doing it offline in a role play or a test driving type situation. Another point that I think will help you is if you video the role-playing sessions. And by doing that, you can provide yourself an opportunity to take that video and take it back, use your phone, set your phone up, and then you've got your video, and then you can go back and look at it, because most all of us, if we've ever heard ourselves speak when we were recorded, or when we see ourselves live doing something on tape, then most of the time we think, oh my gosh, do I really look like that? Do I really sound like that? And by the way, I do that every week when I go back and take a look at the videos that I've recorded for Selling Point. And so by doing that, then you can make those kind of improvements. But as a tip, I would say that don't be too hard on yourself. Is don't ever pick more than 2 things that you want to work on at any one time, and obviously work on worst first, so that over time you're just getting better and better and better, and there are fewer things that you need help with. And finally, remember that the whole point of role play is about getting better. So let the manager, the sales manager or the location manager, let him or her select who's best today in that. Maybe give out an inexpensive prize. The least little bit of recognition is going to ensure that your salespeople are going to look forward to the next role play session rather than dreading it. And in closing, just remember that practice is not the thing that you do once you're good, but it's the thing that you do that makes you good. Have a great sales week.